Hello, welcome to another episode of the GC Sunscast. I'm your host Shane, and joining me as always behind enemy lines is Tom.
G'day Shane, how you going this week?
Yeah, pretty good. Yourself?
Oh mate, I'm like the half the Suns list. I've pulled up lame with a bit of an ankle injury. They wanted to call me up to go and play the NEFL on the weekend, but I was buggered, so they had to go with a bunch of 16-year-olds who got flogged. But anyway, onto the news for this week.
Yes, well, we'll get stuck straight into the game. Gold Coast Suns played St Kilda and went down by 2 points in a heartbreaking finish. 11 goals 12-78 to 11 goals 14-80. So Gold Coast led this game for most of it, and probably in the first three quarters probably played some of their best football all season. But then just dropped off a cliff in that last quarter, and St Kilda came straight back in.
Yeah, if you can score 75 or more points by three-quarter time, you're going to win most games. But it requires you to keep scoring, and they just didn't. It was a real head scratcher. It was like watching two different games. Even the second half of just trying to hold on to a lead. When it was the time to put the foot on the throat. That just baffled me. What did you reckon?
Yeah, I was really impressed in the first half. I thought it was some of the best football we've seen. Tom Lynch was playing like a man possessed, he was playing like a man worth 1.5 million almost. He was taking marks, kicking goals, and showing a really strong leadership on the field. At one point, Ben Ainsworth was getting into a bit of an argument with the St Kilda player, and Lynch pulled him aside, told him off, and when Ainsworth went to go back and have another crack at it, Lynch grabbed him and told him to get off the field. Made sure that he went off the field. So that's really strong leadership to keep a bloke like Ainsworth, who's got a bit of a temper on him, from doing something stupid and hurting the team in future weeks.
Yeah, I thought that was a great sign of leadership, and it was absolutely necessary. And let's not forget, Tommy hasn't got too much experience of being the one-out captain. He's usually got Stephen May kind of being the more vocal and one who's more likely to tell someone, what they should have been doing or getting in the middle of something like that. So it was really good to see because he needed to step up. I think that perhaps Lynch's form was a bit of a barometer for the whole team, though. I don't think he carried it through four quarters at all. And when we were looking like world beaters, he was playing really well. And then when he was sort of, do you think that Stuart Dew made the call and say, tell Tom Lynch to go up and go back down to the back line? Or do you think sometimes he's just taking his captain's prerogative a little too far? Because I know he was badly out of position a few times, and potentially in the final quarter when we needed someone up front to kick to, and he wasn't there because he'd got on his bike and gone down to be kind of ineffective in the back line.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but from what I've been hearing, Stuart Dew's a very much a relationship coach and doesn't teach by telling the players to go there and do this or go here and do that. He teaches them a style of football to play and a way to play the game, not how to play it. So from my understanding it's probably more likely Lynch is taking it upon himself to try to get involved. As he is the captain, he probably has that extra pressure on him to do something to lift the team, and he can't really do that if he's waiting down the other end for the ball to come to him. So maybe it's the case of he's going to go get the ball.
Yeah. I mean, he's taken 6 marks for the game, and he's had 4 mid-50s, which is not a stat that very many players ever get sort of even more than one of. It's a stat that sort of it happens when you've got a forward who goes up the ground and gets the ball on the half on the wing, and then manages to find a teammate across the half forward line, which is we've been missing. So the stat itself isn't just someone who's having a roost from from the back pocket. It's actually a stat that it's difficult to achieve, and he's done it 4 times. So I'm not suggesting at all that he didn't do a good job when he did go up the ground on occasion. I'm just saying sometimes I see him in the back line, and I just think you look like a goose. What are you doing there? You're not effective. Get back up to the wing and wait for your team to get it back there. But I guess he wants to make a point. He wants to say to his mates, "I'm here. I'm going to spoil. I'm going to do whatever I can to get us out of this bind because right now we've got our backs to the wall." So I kind of get it, but I just wish someone would maybe send a runner out and say, "Hey Tom, you've done what you can. Get back up forward."
It could also even be a generational sort of issue. I mean, football these days isn't like what it was when we were growing up as kids, where you'd have your stay-at-home full forwards. They almost seem to be non-existent these days. Maybe Lynch is just the type of person that doesn't want to stay in a goal square, then maybe falls onto the coaching panel to sort of demand that from him.
Yeah, I do. One thing I noticed as well in the game was I'll just rattle off a few names here. Rory Thompson, although battled manfully, Michael Riccitelli and Sam Day all had really low possessions, and even though they did other things that sort of do count. Rory Thompson had 5 1%ers, for example. In fact, a lot of Suns players were sort of scoring high ratings in that area because they were getting balls that are 50-50 and all that kind of thing. But the reason I mention that, and in particular Sam Day, is that the guy's been running all over the place all game, and I saw him in the rucker quite a lot. I think actually probably more than usual. Witts didn't really have a terrific game, and Sam Day has come out of that with 1 hit out. And he must.
Yeah, I saw that. That's a bit of a concern, considering Day's whole reason he's in the team is that flexibility, and he just at the moment doesn't seem to be providing the forward craft to kick goals or the ruck craft to win hitouts and get the ball to advantage for our mids.
That's right, and those are his 2 jobs. I mean, I'd be more than happy to see him playing at centre half back. I think he can spoil marking contests quite well, and he certainly has the skills to be able to do it. Having said that, Jack Leslie actually had a really good game, and playing as the more mobile of the 2 big backs, he had a couple of moments, didn't he? But he held McCartan fairly well. He wasn't a 10 out of 10 game, but so does Day stay in the team?
I don't think Day should stay in the team. I do see him as more of a key forward, and I think he probably needs to go to the NEFL to work on his skill set down there. As far as Leslie, yeah, he's coming along. He's having a couple of good games, getting consecutive games with Stephen May out. I just think Leslie's lacking that mongrel. He needs to get a bit more aggression about him as a key defender, and I think once he gets that, he'll be a really good key defender that would be pushing for best 22 in most sides.
Yeah, I mean, last week I said that he's probably gone at the end of the year. I don't think that the effort is lacking. I mean, he took 8 marks and he had 9 1%ers. It's usually Rory Thompson doing that kind of stuff, or Stephen May. So, he's playing the role, and he doesn't. Another thing I always get back to is if you come in and replace a great player, you don't have that player to back you up, if you understand what I mean. So when you're replacing them, you've got to do everything that they do, and that's impossible for an all-Australian calibre fullback like Stephen May. So you've got to look at him on face value of what he is, and I think you're quite right. If he can produce the same effort with a bit of mongrel, then he's a keeper. One other thing I'd like to say about him is, yes, he's had, 5 seasons now, but for a key position player in the back line, that's actually not a whole lot. Like those kinds of guys, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of interest in the market for him, because he'd be a starting player at a lot of clubs.
Yeah, key position players generally take about 5 years before they start really showing the sort of talent and skill that they have to build up that muscle, build up that football nous to just to compete with the big forwards. The other player I'd like to give a shout out to while we're in the back line is Charlie Ballard. He was part of that infamous Lockie Weller deal, and he had an outstanding game. Took 8 marks and was just mopping up as almost a rebound defender type of role.
Yeah, he knows where the ball is going to fall. He's got very good eyes. He's making up for his physical deficiencies, which he's very gifted. He's just tall and skinny. Do you remember we did, in one of the earlier podcasts we discussed how he'd grown something like 6 inches in 6 months, and it really sort of turned him into a bit of a gangly teen, and it sent his draft stocks plummeting because he wasn't in his senior year. He wasn't producing the same slick footy. So he's got the skills. He's getting the coordination going into his body, but he's going to be a champion.
Yeah, I'm really excited about what Charlie Ballard can produce as he gets more comfortable with the level of AFL football and more comfortable with his teammates and those players around him.
That's it. I mean, taking marks in those situations, you need to know what you're doing. So he's the first one to see where the ball's going to drop. He positions himself, and then he looks like he's in pain because someone will generally crunch into him as soon as he catches the thing. But he holds onto it, and when his disposal wasn't fantastic, but he's had 16 of them, and that's the best effort so far, and it's a lot better than a lot of other players in the team who, for 3/4, look like smashing the Saints.
Our midfield wasn't anywhere to be seen against the Saints. We had 54 to 19 clearances. We were the 19, obviously. We were absolutely smashed by St Kilda in the midfield. You go through the list and look at the possessions and disposals that our players had. Lyons was our leading disposal getter with 23. That is a very dismal performance. I mean, Jared Lyons obviously played a fairly good game compared to all the other midfielders, but 23 disposals. He had 23 disposals by half time in a lot of games last
year. Yeah, we were a high possession team last year, and we're a low possession team this year. And we're if you remember at this time last year, we weren't doing terribly badly on the win loss ratio. It was after this stage last year that the wheels fell off. We can't afford for the wheels to fall off at this stage, and it's something to be said that, I love the way that the first and second quarters panned out. The first quarter, the Suns kept responding. They put a goal on, concede a goal, and get one straight back. And then, it was good end-to-end footy. And then putting on those 6 goals in a row from the end of the first quarter to the sort of stoppage time in the second quarter, you saw a lot of slick footy. But when you're in the lead like that, you can't stop. But if the other team goes to another gear, you've got to sort of modify what you're doing. And I would have thought that one of the ways to modify the way we were going, because we certainly lost control, was to play safer footy, to slow it down a bit and just go, look, let's just keep possession for a minute or two. And then we can go on a front forward foray, and then we can try and keep it in that half of the ground for a bit. And it's guys like him who, in close, actually have very efficient and slick disposal, which we were using in the first half, but completely stopped using it in the second half, which just meant even fewer disposals and losing the bloody game.
That is essentially where we fell short in that last quarter. The players were they could feel St Kilda coming and they just sort of froze. I'm sure our younger players would have been feeling the fatigue. I mean, this day and age, AFL football players are running 11 plus kilometres a week, and they're young bodies. Those are their first or second year in the AFL, still aren't designed to be able to consistently run that sort of length in 2 hours, 2.5 hours worth of time. So, it no, it's so our young players, considering we've got a very young team, that's quite a few of them, can't keep up with the pressure style that Stuart Dew wants us to play as. And then that puts a lot of pressure, I think, on the rest of the side. And then you've got players like Jared Lyons, Nick Holman. They get the ball deep in defence and they're under pressure because they don't have support around them, so they just bomb it. But the problem is everyone's in too close, too much congestion, except for the St Kilda defender who's just sitting back, mopping up, and then pumping it straight back in. And that's all that last quarter was, really. It was just played in St Kilda's half, and whenever a Gold Coast got the ball, they'd long kick it down the line straight to St Kilda, and it would just come straight back.
Yeah, I mean, look, it'd be remiss if we didn't talk about a few of the dodgy calls that just led straight to St Kilda freeze. But then again, if you're a St Kilda supporter, you'd probably shrug your shoulders and say, "So what? That's a free kick every day." I say it every week. It's not like the umpires are going out and saying we're going to make the Gold Coast lose this game, but they certainly did it. We just don't get the rub of the green. And the Saints aren't a highly regarded team, but it wasn't that long ago they were in grand finals. So, just to digress for a very short period of time, I was watching ABC Offsiders, and they didn't have anything to say about the Suns apart from getting beaten, but they were talking about how at a lot of World Cups that the Australian soccer team goes to play, that we never ever get the rub of the green because we're not viewed as a team that's likely to win the whole thing, and therefore it just doesn't seem to be a conscious decision of the referees, but yet every World Cup, Australia seems to be hard done by in one call or another. And if you transfer that to the Suns, well, the Suns are the Johnny-come-latelys of the comp, and St Kilda had a lot of support and the crowds behind them. So that's where you see things calls like that 50-metre penalty on Thompson, which he was chasing hard right on the other guy's bonce. The other guy marks the ball, slows down, and then Tomo gets done for hands in the back. 50-metre penalty. I mean, come on. It's a goal. You're giving away 6 points to a team that's chasing a lead. And then the other one was when Leslie got done. I mean, it's possibly a free kick, but it's possibly just two blokes going to try and mark the bloody ball. And one guy's kind of fouled up the other guy, but the other guy's the defender, so he gets penalised. So, that's 2 goals that were given away, and there were a lot of other free kicks. I think St Kilda had about 8 straight free kicks in that period of time. At the end, the final free kick count was 28-21 St Kilda's way, but it was about 20-20 in the third quarter. So the Saints definitely got the rub of the green at the end there, and the umps helped them win it.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I thought I heard during the week that Gold Coast didn't have a single free kick in that last quarter. So if that's true, there is something wrong there, whether that is umpiring bias or just blatant ignorance. I'm not quite sure. You had what everyone at the stadium thought was a trip with Ben Ainsworth in that last quarter running towards an open 350. You had, after St Kilda had hit the lead, there was a throw by a St Kilda player, which has also been highlighted by the On the Couch show on Fox Footy last night.
Yep.
And that should have been a free kick and a goal to the Suns. So we do just seem to get those wrong 50-50 decisions going against us. Not even that, probably the 60-40 decisions always seem to go against us.
There was also the incident. It was deep in the Saints forward 50, and Archie has tackled. I think it was Gresham, and the balls come spilling loose. It was holding the ball all day, any game, any umpire, and Archie's stopped playing, turned around and looked at the umpire, and the St Kilda players just picked up the ball, ran around and kicked the goal. And I'm just, my jaw was hanging open. I couldn't believe it. It was just, and it was happening, just incident after incident. And I keep saying this, the Suns players are young, and those kinds of calls go against them, and they drop their bundle. And, that's inexcusable, but it's also understandable.
The youth of our side is really starting to show the cracks of, their limits at the moment and what they can put up with, what they can endure. The not 2.5 months of travel we've had to deal with since not having access to Metricon due to the Com Games. I think it's really starting to take its toll on the players. We're seeing a sort of a delayed pain as players just sort of struggle to get up each week from, I don't know, maybe it's all of a sudden being back at home and not having to travel there out of their routine, and they're struggling to get up to play a full game of football. But we did see 3 good quarters, so we're getting there. The boys are getting there, and I'm sure by the end of the season we'll see a lot more good quarters and hopefully a couple of wins.
Yeah, there's a few reasons for the late fade outs, and you can't sort of discount the fact that they went and travelled all around the bloody world, and travelling to Perth and staying there. I think the long term benefit of that will really show, because there were 25, 26 players over there with all the staff, and they would have had that real chance to cement relationships that are only still pretty new with a first year coach and all that kind of stuff, and new players and players who were sent over there, like Heron was sent over there. He didn't play, but now that he's played a few games in the team, that's good management of a player. So there's all these sort of micro advantages. Overall, the macro is that it didn't do us any good at all, because it was travelling a long way, staying away from friends and family and all that kind of stuff, and losing a couple of games, and one of them was a home game. So, as I said, there are benefits. The money that Freo paid us for that 4 points, that'll go a long way. 4 points will go a long way for Freo too, I guess. Can't get them back, but we've got the money in the bank, so there are benefits. I have to say that fatigue, it's coming back to rob us in the fourth quarter, but also that pressure. We have played good first quarters, and if you put in double the effort in the first quarter, well, it goes to show that if there's not much left in the tank in the last quarter, then something's got to give.
Yeah, well, something's got to give for our reserve side as well. The Gold Coast Suns played Sydney reserves. We had 6 goals, 440 to Sydney's 15 goals, 17, 107. So it was a pretty dismal effort again by the reserve side, but we were undermanned again. The game was fairly tight through most of it. It was a third quarter where the Suns faded out and Sydney scored 58 points. So that's predominantly where this big lead that Sydney got came. Peter Wright kicked 2 goals, was strong around the ground with some hit-outs and 20-odd possessions. So he's definitely pushing his case to get into the AFL side next week. Well, maybe at the expense of Sam Day, but we'll find out.
We've been calling for a couple of weeks, but the call's getting louder, isn't it?
It is. Brody had 28 disposals, 4 tackles and 6 clearances, so that would have been handy on the weekend. And Spencer is pushing for selection as well with 18 disposals, 5 tackles and 7 rebound 50s. So it's a good thing Ballard had a good game, because I think Spencer's fighting for his spot and breathing down his neck in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the best players were, as you mentioned, Spencer and Wright, and there were 3 academy players who were named in the best. Caleb Graham was named as the best player on the field. And if we're going to get the calibre of players like him coming back to the team after the national championships, we've got Bailey Scott, Dirk Conan, we've got quite a few players who are away on representative duty. When they're all back, this NEFL team, with a few more players to return from injury from the senior list, we're not going to be flogged like this. We beat Sydney last time, so we can beat them. So this is disappointing, but we've beaten them, and we've beat them this time. We've been beaten with a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds bringing up the tail. So that'll change. But what did you think about Bedaric and Lower?
Yeah, I don't really understand what all the fuss was about. I didn't watch the game, but the statistics aren't really up to much, especially when compared to the other players. So, I mean, Lower had 9 disposals, 5 tackles and a goal. And Bedaric had 12 disposals and 4 rebound 50s.
Yeah. Well, he's a bottom major, so he's not.
It seems like it's a Suns coaching personnel which is naming the best. Maybe they're just looking at the level that they expect those players to be playing at, and if they exceed that level, then they're named in the best.
Well, look, I could see Peter Wright, Jacob Dawson, and Max Spencer coming into the senior team in the remaining 10 games of the season. Wright's got to come in this week. Dawson, there may not be a like for like, but what do you think about Spencer coming in for Jack Bowes?
Yeah, I think there could be some positional changes that would allow for that. Bowes has been playing all over the ground, doing a bit of work as a rebounding defender or as a wingman, and sometimes even as a bit of a forward. So he seems to be a Jack Martin style of player for us, where we just want to play them everywhere. So if Spencer was to come into his side, maybe Charlie Ballard takes that spot of playing the everywhere position, such as going forward or playing on the wing, which we know he can do.
Yeah, Spencer can do that. He can go forward. He can go up the wing. He brings the ball well out of defensive 50 though. So you want him. You kind of want him in there doing that, which Ballard's been doing a job there for us. You wonder, has Riccitelli played one average game too many?
Well, let me put it to you this way. The Suns don't have any leaders. Full stop. Don't have any leaders in the AFL side at the moment. Don't have any leaders in the NEFL side at the moment. Most of our senior players that do have leadership qualities are injured, and we're left with Tom Lynch. Now, Tom Lynch at this stage isn't committed to the Gold Coast Suns, so there's question marks on his leadership ability while he's not committed. Obviously, players aren't going to be as responsive to Tom Lynch in his current situation. Now, from my understanding, David Swallow is a potential leader, but Swallow's more of the Gary Ablett sort of leadership where he leads by example. He's a reserved person and isn't the talkative, demanding leader that you want. Someone that's going to pull you aside, tell you, all right, I need this from you for this game or at this moment. So that seems to be the problem with the Suns in all aspects of their on-field performance at the moment. And Riccitelli is probably one of the few Suns that has that ability. So whether we like his performance or not, we need on-field leadership. And unfortunately, I can't think of other players in that side besides Riccitelli that can do that.
Yeah, no, you are right about that. And that's one of the reasons why I've defended his place in the team all year when a lot of other people have called for him to go. He's been such a good player. And you've got to remember, he came from the Lions, and the Lions tried to do do the dirty on him and trade him to Carlton for Fev, and he played out at the final season of his contract there, and even though he was so dirty, he wasn't the best and fairest. He's loyal, and he got burnt big time by them, and I really hope that we don't burn him, and that he reaches he probably will have to get a tap on the shoulder to say, mate, you've had it, you got to retire. But there's a lot of different ways to do that. The way North Melbourne forcibly retired their players and then lost the next 12 games in a row or something ridiculous, including finals, that's not the way to do it. I wonder if maybe he could be rested, even though right now our injury list isn't spectacular. Yeah, I'd hate to see him go, because I kind of feel like if he does get dropped, that he doesn't really have the because let's face it, he's got to play that halfback position. It would just be too confusing for everyone else, and it would affect other players' development if he went back into the midfield, and he's too slow. So he's got to play that game off halfback, but you kind of feel like if he goes back to the NEAFL, he's only going to get 10 positions a game, because that's all the halfback blankers get in the NEAFL. And sure, he'd be invaluable, experience for them and leadership, and you even did you hear his name called a few times in the commentary when he was off the ball, and they were saying, oh yeah, nice block there by Michael Rischitelli, and it's like, I didn't even see it, but I'm very glad they pointed it out, because you don't get a stat for that.
He gets out there, he does the hard work, does the 1%ers. And if we can even find room for him on the list next year to play as like a NEAFL player, whether we're granted extra list spots by the AFL, or whether we find some way to have him on as a coach and play him the way we were able to play Eddie Sainsbury, I think he could provide some real leadership qualities to our NEAFL side as well, not just this year, but in future years. So hopefully Rischitelli stays on at the Suns and keeps giving to us, because he's got plenty to give.
Let's not forget that there's a 46th list spot that we are not utilising at the moment. So not only have we got a horrifically long injury list of, let me count, 9, 10, 14 out of 45 players. So there's only 31 players to choose from, and you've got to commit 23 of them to the game. There's only 8 players who are available for the NEAFL team this week, although Scrimshaw, Kolodjasny and Lonergan tests. Rosa, May, Bowes, Fiorini, Hanley are due back in the next month or so. So, the cavalry will come. But the fact that we're not using that 46th spot, now I've got to admit, it's a Category B rookie spot. But perhaps somebody like a Lonergan or maybe even a Kolodjasny could be re-rookied into that spot.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. You touched on our long injury list. I just want to give a quick update on a couple of players. Jack Bowes is out for 3 to 4 weeks with a quad injury. Michael Barlow is listed as TBA. So at this stage, we've got no idea when Michael Barlow could be back playing. And he's coming back from that fractured face. And Scrimshaw and Kolodjasny, as you said, are both listed as tests. That's under concussion issues. They both had head knocks in recent weeks, and they're coming back slowly. The club's just doing everything they can to make sure that concussion protocols are followed.
Mm. And Aaron Hall is confirmed gone for the season.
Yes, he is. Although I think most of us suspected that would be the case. You also mentioned off chat that the Allies almost beat the Vic Metro in the under-18s competition. Do you want to tell me more about that?
Yeah, well, it was played in Southport, so a few of our listeners may have actually got along to the game. Look, there's not a hell of a lot to say, because the coverage of the under-18s is not very good. But after the previous week, the Allies defeated Vic Country and then have managed to get up and beat, the perennial favourites, you have to say, in Vic Metro. Um, Again, it came down to the last couple of points, right down to the wire. What I can say is that Bailey Scott was again named as one of the best. Didn't see any mention of any of the other Allies players, but they don't provide the kind of stats that we're used to in the AFL or the NEFL. We had a number of players playing, although Caleb Graham didn't play, he played NEFL. And I think a couple of our Allies listed players didn't play, but I think about 5 of them did. So Ryan Gilmore played NEFL. But Dirk Conan, Bailey Scott, and a few of the others would have played. The thing to remember is that our academy is exceptionally good at producing defenders. So we've recruited all these defenders already through the academy, and we've got a whole bunch more defenders coming through. Although Caleb Graham, again named best in the NEFL in his, I think it was his first game for the NEFL this year. He yet to find out, but I think he was playing centre half forward. But he may have been playing centre half back. I don't know. He plays either or. So he's an exciting player coming through. Bailey Scott, if he chooses us, could end up costing us that West Coast first round pick. That's how it's going. Or a couple of second rounders, or a second and a third rounder, whatever it costs us going down in to get him, because it seems like he's going to be nominated pretty early because he's one of the players of the comp.
Yeah, well, it sounds good. We're getting a lot of quality defenders out of the academy side. It's surprising that Caleb Graham wasn't playing for the Allies, but maybe they were just giving him a rest and sharing the duties around, giving another kid the opportunity to play a part.
Yeah, they got 50 guys on the list, so they try to play everyone. Crossley was named the Allies MVP last year, Big Goober, and he only played 3 games. Connor Nutting only played 3 games, and that was enough to earn him, or that and a bit of NEFL form was enough to earn him a draft pick. He's someone who you probably want to see a little of in the AFL side, given that we regarded him so highly last year. Look, the Allies have got that they could win the whole thing, and I dare say Caleb Graham's being saved for 1 or 2 more matches. It's also the kind of thing where there's probably 8 key position players in the squad who are all up at that kind of level. So they're just rotating people around in different positions. It doesn't sound like he had the greatest game of all last week, but that's in a winning team. And Dirk Conan probably played in his position and killed it. So you don't really hear if a key position defender has done his job, you don't read about it in the highlights, do you?
Well, the Suns have a big task this week. We take on Hawthorn in Tasmania at 1:45 p.m. on Saturday. So it's going to be cold weather down there, and Tasmania will get a chance to come out and show whether they deserve an AFL side.
Yeah, that was their undoing last year. Though they had a bad start and they got flogged by us, and if it wasn't for us beating them twice, they would have been in the finals. So we'll have to sort of see. The Tasmanian question is such drivel that I'm surprised it gets oxygen. Like early in the year, it was all about how the Suns had this terrible, schedule of playing away, and there's no way they could win any games. And we've gone and won 3 games. Admittedly, that 2 of them were games we were entitled to win, and the other one was in torrential downpour. So, we've come out with those 3 wins. The injury list is horrific. How much of it is down to the Optus Oval, Optus Stadium, and then the media in Melbourne just decided to spend about 3 weeks just totally panning the team and going as far as to say that the city doesn't deserve a franchise. I mean, Tasmania can't even get 15,000 people to a game.
Yeah, the statistics over the last few years have showed Metricon generally average more than what the games in Tasmania do. And then on top of that, you just look at this year. I mean, the Suns got around 7,000, I think, to the Melbourne game at the Gabba. And that was on the same night as a double header with the Titans and Broncos playing a kilometre down the road. So the Melbourne media conveniently forgot to mention that part and then continued to berate the Suns, even though the following week we got 7,000 to a Bulldogs home game in Ballarat. And I think the week after that it was GWS North Melbourne in Tasmania, and that only got about 7,000 as well, I think. So yeah, so it's really just the media, specifically the Melbourne media, because that's all we hear, being AFL related. They're just going to cater to the Melbourne suburbanites, the people down there that are more likely to pay attention to their message.
Yeah. But I mean, what kind of message is it? You know, the AFL spent all this money, and the Gold Coast, the franchise, the Southport Sharks, the Gold Coast City Council, the Queensland Government, AFL, all this, and the Com Games, they've spent all this money and put together this terrific plan to set the Suns up as a team of the future. Years ago, it was all about how the Suns got so many draft concessions that they were going to win 5 premierships in a row and all this crap. And even the most optimistic Suns supporter didn't think that was going to happen. It was only the big media. So they're just so far wide of the mark, it isn't even funny. And you know, we keep proving them wrong. We come out and we played a very good game against St Kilda. The crowd wasn't brilliant, but if you average out the crowd from this weekend compared to 2 weeks ago, 13 or 14,000 average, and that's about 2 home games. So if we can keep an average of 14 to 15,000 for the rest of the year, that's okay. It's not like we're playing for the flag. We have to do a Richmond and run the table to make the finals. So, you know, we certainly could make a statement this week to win a game and shut them up for good. But you just feel that the Hawks might be in form and have that. Their record in Tasmania is something close to Geelong's record down in Geelong, isn't it?
Yeah, I do believe it's a pretty impressive record. Did we beat them down there last year?
Yeah. Well, I was trying to figure that one out, but I got the feeling that it wasn't the Tassie game, but I have to double check that. But we beat them twice last year, and we'd never beaten them before,
So I think we're always in with a chance of winning. We've all seen Gold Coast play some really good football when they want to. If by some miracle the Suns can string that together for 3.5, possibly 4 quarters, then anything's possible. We could beat Richmond. But the way the club's been playing lately and the way Hawthorn's been playing, you'd think it's going to be a fairly one-sided contest. However, fingers crossed that the Suns can put together a strong performance and be competitive, keep it to a respectable margin. The Suns take on Hawthorn this week. Hopefully we can walk away with a competitive performance, possibly even a win. So
yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? It's always fun to dream. Look, I don't think a lot of fans gave us much of a chance against St Kilda, and we nearly took it. So a bit more of a 4-quarter effort, and we're every chance against the Hawks. As I said, we match up well against them, and with a couple of ins, you know, there's 3 or 4 players that I think could find themselves, you know, talked about a lot at the selection table. If I'm going to name names, my mate Alex Sexton had 3 goals in an otherwise ordinary performance. So, you know, he probably stays for now. I think we're looking at Day dropping out of the team. We know Bose is gone, and there may be one or two others who I won't speculate on. We'll wait to see.
Yeah, well, as we finish up, there's been a lot of talk on Big Footy, and a lot of fans unhappy with players like Young and Sexton being in the side. I've been talking to some people at the club, and from my understanding is they are very worried about players getting tired and the young guys being exhausted. So players like Brody, who apparently still have a ways to go to become a complete AFL footballer, these boys are going to have to be managed, and I wouldn't be expecting to see them in the side regularly. At this stage, I think for the rest of the season, we're just going to see a regular rotation of some of these players as they get used to the AFL lifestyle.
Well, we've got nothing to lose, and I don't want to see a tank. I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. If it gets us one or two places up the draft order, who cares? We've got plenty of draft picks. We've got plenty of academy guys to bring in. We don't need to be tanking. We need to win games.
All right, and one last thing I want to touch on is we've had a couple of questions come through on the Big Footy site from some fans. A couple of those questions are related to what would you ask people. A couple of those questions are related to what would you ask people at the football club, and I have been able to get some answers. One of them is, where is the club at with Stadiums Queensland? Well, from what I hear, the club is in talks with Stadiums Queensland and are very confident of getting a deal that is better than what the Titans have secured. So that's all I can say so far. It's looking promising, and they're very confident that they're going to walk away with something a lot better than what they currently have.
Yeah, that's what we need. And with all the things we've had to do this year just to make a few bucks, that's certainly knowing that there's going to be some extra room in the budget in the next few years for some things that we need, and not having to spend all our money paying it back to the government for the stadium that we're the only tenants of. That we just had to basically toss away our season to accommodate the Commonwealth Games. So we're due for some leniency. We're due for a few good decisions to go our way, and a bit of commitment from the government.
Yeah. So things will turn around. The people at the club are confident that they can improve the club, and the club will be around for a long time. So I'm looking forward to that, and I urge all members and supporters to jump on board. Support the Suns, support this podcast as well. If we can get enough views, who knows, we might be able to start getting interviews with some players. But
absolutely, that'd be terrific, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be great. But for now, let's just enjoy the fact that the Suns were competitive this week and go forward dreaming of a win this week.
All right, Shane. Well, I'll catch up with you next week, and hopefully we can play the song, eh?
Yeah, thanks for that, Tom. Have a good one.
You too, mate. See ya.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the GC Sunscast. If you like what you hear, please get involved in our small community over on bigfooty.com on the Gold Coast board. Chat with myself, Sunners, and Tom, 17er, as well as dozens of other Gold Coast fans. You can reach me on Facebook or Twitter at 32bitshane, or email me 32bitshane@gmail.com with any queries. Leave a comment or review on iTunes and SoundCloud, or a donation on Patreon. Just search GC Sunscast. Donations are in US dollars and will go towards reliable tech and hosting the podcast, so listeners have access to our earlier episodes.